Chris Chaput here asking, what is that? And what happened to that squarish, blocky hanger that I was promising you? Well, it's been upgraded. Yeah, let's call it an upgrade. So I was looking at it, and I admitted it was ugly. It was a function first thing that I wanted to do to test different axle positions. But in addition to being ugly, it was actually pretty heavy. And I gave it a second look and thought, okay, what could I do to reduce the weight a little bit? And the unintentional byproduct of that is that it does look a little bit sexier. But in any event, I thought that I would give you guys an update on where I am with the project and show a little bit behind the scenes of how some of these things are cut and what has to happen to machine a hanger and do some stuff like that. So I'm going to go into my SolidWorks mode and point out that this really is, that block feature, just with a couple new cuts in it. More specifically, if I were to look at a profile, for example, that's the shape. So what I had done is took the square thing and created this profile on the end of the hanger, and then I'm going to show you how you take a in this case it's called a corner radius mill. It's like an end mill, which is mostly symmetrical, but it's rounded on the corners, and that'll come in and leave these features. Let me go ahead and run this and mirror it. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, so that's just going to be a mirrored cut. But these features in here that are rounded will add to strength, make it look a little bit better. I'm trying to make this thing look like aluminum. SolidWorks has the ability to do a lot of things as far as the looks go. When you want to put edges on it to see corners and things a little bit more detailed. It may be a little bit uglier, but when trying to see what's going on, it's easier to grab corners and to examine some things. So that's the hanger. In real life, it looks like this, and I'm realizing that this camera is kind of far away, and you're going to see how a green screen is ending up to wreak havoc on a lot of things. So I literally have a green screen behind my head. You have to illuminate it evenly, or it can get kind of blotchy, and then put this chroma key filter on. I'm doing that in OBS, and that's why it kind of outlines me and puts that weird thing that looks like molecules as a background there. And I kind of have another window capture, which has got SolidWorks up in the corner. I changed that background to have a green tint because if there's any little green fringe outlining my head and stuff, it'll blend in with the green background. So now I have green molecules back there. So as long as I'm in SolidWorks right now, I don't think we need to look at that anymore. What does it want? It wants me to save stuff. Fine. Let's see what I have back here. So this is the representative of the mill. There's this foundation table that you put into a mill. This is called a rotary indexer, and it's the fourth axis in this mill. That's getting a little bit complicated for a lot of people, but basically, if something can go back and forth on one axis, that's a one-axis machine. If it can go back and forth, and let's say front to back, there's two axes of movement. You've got, in this case, a vertical milling machine has this vertical cylinder. Oh my God, a spindle that holds the tool that will do the cutting. That's on the Z-axis. So there's a 3-axis vertical mill. It actually has the spindle stay still and then moves the table around underneath it. But now on that table, you have the ability to rotate. If I come in here a little bit, I'll show you these jaws and how they move back and forth. And without any parts in it, it won't make much sense. But these cuts right here are what were necessary to hold the part. And excuse me, that can be seen a little bit better here. So here's where I take a part, and this kind of gray translucent version of the part, you can kind of see through this thing. It's a little bit bigger. That's the stock that I cut out. And then the part with all the features in it is like superimposed over it. So I have my stock, which is like how the piece starts out, piece of metal, and then what gets cut out of it. So I'm a very visual person, so I use this when I'm doing my programming in SolidWorks. I overlay those two things there, and now that piece is, this part is clamped between these two things. There's a crank, and it moves the side of this jaw over. But anyway, that's how you hold a part. And then this is what I mean by this other axis, or that this is a rotary indexer. So this thing can be moved around by these server motors, in addition to the table moving back and forth and left and right, and the spindle going up and down. So you can do a lot. If you have, like, let's say a block, a rectangular block, and maybe I'll switch back to this thing so you can see my hands waving around. I can be Italian for a minute. If you have a rectangular block, like we'll use my cell phone here, there's 6 sides on a rectangular solid, front, back, left, right, top, bottom. And in one clamping, that's where I'm holding this part, I can come down and do this and do a hole or some features there. I can rotate this thing, and now I could do some features on that side, rotate it the other way and do features there. So I can get 3 out of the 6 sides of a rectangular solid with this type of configuration. Then typically what you'll do is you'll take that part and you'll flip it upside down and then rotate it. Now I can cut here, cut that end, and cut that end. So in 2 clampings, I can cut all 6 sides of a rectangular solid. So when you're doing base plates, or in this case like a squarish, hanger, it's kind of a godsend to have that 4th axis and the ability to do that. So let me go back to my SolidWorks scene here. And again, why would it be important to be able to, move this thing over? Well, for one thing, now I can, in this position, drill holes and tap and do some stuff on that side. And then when it's flipped over there, the same thing. Now the spindle, which is always vertical, can come down and get these holes here. So let's see. I think this is, I kind of lock in this position. But the thing that I'm interested in telling you is this. So when I was thinking about making this thing lighter weight, I was looking at just being able to clamp this thing up and have the end be exposed enough to be able to come around and do a cut. So I'm going to go to the cam side here. I am going to say no to a couple things. I just really want to go in and edit this feature. And now I'm editing the job. I really wanted to edit the cut here. So what I'm basically saying is, hey, go around this edge on the part that I want to do. Go around the outside of that and do that all the way down to this face that I have here. And you'll see the tool that's going to come and cut it. That's got this, again, this corner radius tool has this radius here. So you set it up, and eventually what you see right here in blue is a Toolpath. So this like tool, this looks like a drill, but it's a mill. It's going to come around, and it's going to go around, and I think I'm taking off like about a 1/16 of an inch at a time, like 60 thousandths or something. And so you can do a simulation of what is going to happen. So you don't want, any disasters to happen. Here's the tool. I'm going to hide the head of that tool. and just kind of run this thing. So you can see that my machine is going to put this part on its edge. I'll zoom in a little bit. And it's going to come around, and you can see in green that it's, taking off some material. And basically, when it's done doing that, the tombstone, or this rotary indexer thing I've been talking about, is going to flip it over and do the other side. Now, I can't do that until I re-clamp it, because I have to take this side right here and have it come out on the other side. But anyway, by adding this extra 2 steps to the process, I'm able to get the hanger better looking, lighter weight. And so, it wasn't that much, but it was able to work. So I'm going to now go into this god-awful ugly mode. I had to switch to my webcam, which does not get the same image quality. And I get here, I'm going to switch back and tell you why. Because I want to show you things like this. Isn't this awesome? Aren't you really interested in all the details of what you're seeing here? Yeah, this is great, except for you can't see it. Same thing with this. Do you even know what this is? Do you want to know what that is? Well, you can't, because something's happening here. Same thing here. This is a little bit bizarro. And lastly, I'll say, hey, what about this? Is this the new model from Star Wars? What the hell is this? Well, that's the problem with being the green urethane guy and having my life in green. When it comes to having a green screen, it messes everything up. So I'm going to go here and show you. Well, now you can kind of see what it is that I was showing you. It's green, and I don't have a filter, the chroma key thing on. So now it's you can see it without the software removing it. But this ugly green in the background doesn't create a lot of contrast. So I'm literally going to reach back here and do this, and now you can see my ugly wall, which is, I don't know, maybe a little bit of blue, and see all the stuff that the green screen was covering up. So this just turns out to be something that I wanted to show you the effect of the green screen. It's a 0-degree truck for electric skateboards that Dave Derrickson, aka Psycho Tiller, made. And it's got some clamps on it. I think this is a 240 millimeter hanger. So that's very, very wide for longboard standards, certainly for street standards. One of the other things I was showing you were some bushings that I had poured. These are cylindrical. Some have kingpin holes through them, and some don't. They're just a solid cylinder. And that's going to turn out to work out very nicely when I take a single one of those and kind of slice it like bread and put it into this truck. This was my fire truck that's got this hole in it instead of a bushing seat. And a single bushing is going to go in there, and these 2 rods that come in this way go through the bushing, and so it stretches and pushes the urethane and really snaps back. So it's this kind of intense return to center fire truck, but the green bushing screwed it up. So here was the truck and the progress that this video was about. And as you can see, it's pretty ugly. I'm going to go ahead and do that other feature on it to make it look more like the the pretty one. But you can see kind of a substantial amount of material. And as long as this square feature, with the holes going through it, are able to clamp it up in the 4 different directions, who cares about this other than the fact that it's making it lighter. So anyway, that's just a little bit about what it took to recut it, what it looked like before, what it's like after. An earlier prototype that I tested my cuts with was too long, and this one I actually threaded this piece, and then as you can see I have bolts going up into it that way, which it's not that bad of a deal, except for I can't really easily get a wrench, especially an Allen wrench, through. So I'd have to take this lock nut off and take the hanger off, and then take those two bolts out more easily, rotate it, reclamp it. But every time I wanted to reposition the axle, I was going to have to take the truck apart. I think I said before, and I mean it, skateboarders, especially this guy, we're lazy. We don't want to do that. So that to me represents kind of a design flaw. And when I decided to go the other way and to put the bolt head up here, it necessitated that recessed hole, because I didn't like the bolt head jutting up above that, because I'm going to go out and do some grinds in the pools for sure. I needed to get that bolt down in there, but then I didn't like the void that it created on the bottom, so that's what kind of gave the idea of putting those posts on there, which then created a much stronger part that resists shear, because this thing wouldn't be sliding around side to side. So I guess you can kind of see how this thing goes together, and how it's locked in, would be lifted, screwed down, lifted, screwed down. So I don't have to take the hanger off at all, off the kingpin with the bushings and everything. I can just have that. So the other thing I was showing was a green wheel. And then sometimes even if I just show the truck, maybe I'll illustrate the point by going back here and raising up this green screen. Well, notice how you can see through the bushings part of this? It's kind of weird, Looks like it's semi-translucent now because it's probably picking up a little bit of a reflection, but it's bizarro to be able to see the background and to see through anything green. I have a whole bunch of t-shirts that have green, like ABEC 11 stuff. So like Kermit the Frog once said, it ain't easy being green. So have I babbled on about everything I want you to see for now? I suppose so. I got to admit, I'm getting a lot of good feedback from people who are messaging me, wanting to know what's happening, wanting to see if they could, get some. And the answer is definitely going to be yes. I kind of consider this to be like an open source project where I'm going to absolutely support and help people, if they're interested in this kind of thing, make their own trucks. I can give you all the information about new school hole patterns versus old school hole patterns, how to integrate that into your board if you want a series or patterns of equally spaced holes to move either of those hole patterns or those decks over, about hangers, about bushing seats, about bushing heights, about clearance. There's a lot of stuff that just sounds foreign at first, like what's 1032 hardware? What's the diameter? Well, it's 190 thousandths. 190 thousandths, what does that look like? How do you put that in perspective? About the threading on your axles and your kingpins, how do those change? There's a lot of not mysteries, but when you break it down like this wheel, we know this as a 70 millimeter wheel. Nobody really thinks of wheels in inches, but that's a little bit, it's about a quarter inch less than 3 inches, because 76.2 is a 3-inch wheel, but nobody thinks about a 3-inch wheel in skateboarding. So we're using the imperial system there. And you go, oh, okay, let's put a bearing in there. What kind of bearing are we going to put in there? Well, in this case, also metric, a 22 millimeter OD bearing with a 8 millimeter bore that is 7 millimeters wide. Well, what about the axle that we put in it? 5/16 of an inch. And it's like, what? Why are we using 5/16 axles? It's kind of because that's the way we always did it. And the difference between 5/16, which is 0.3125, and 8 millimeters, which is 0.3149, ish, is really not that bad. So it's a good, slip fit. But then we call it an 8 millimeter axle. We call it a 10 millimeter spacer. It's not. It's 400 thousandths of an inch for skateboards and 300 thousandths of an inch for roller skates, for quad roller skates. So if you put an actual 10 millimeter spacer in a skateboard wheel, it doesn't work. because it's too small, and you tighten it up and it'll pinch the bearings to actually get it to do anything. And people overseas in China, they start manufacturing a bunch of 10 millimeter, spacers. So there's this kind of madness. And also that bearing, that metric bearing, the 608 bearing, how big's the ball in that metric bearing? 5/32 of an inch in diameter. So anyway, you have to kind of know, or you get to understand, that there's a bit of madness in this world. And also longboarders look at trucks as being 180 millimeters wide, but a shortboarder, a pool park guy, doesn't know what the hell that means, because they have a 5-inch truck. And that's, the ends of the hanger, until all of a sudden somebody goes, no, let's go axle tip to axle tip, and say that that's like an 8-inch truck. There's not even an agreement, once you know the style, like imperial, whether or not you're going to measure one way or the other. So it's kind of all over the map. And after you've been around it a long time, you can move back and forth pretty easily, like somebody who's bilingual. So I can help you with that. My plans are at some point to start some kind of an online depository where I can upload files that you can 3D print on a 3D printer. These would be things like a riser pad, something simple. You can actually have things that you can trace, like a thin plastic piece that you can print out, maybe the nose of a board or a drop-through slot or some things like that. So sometimes it's just good to be able to put something out. I'd like to be able to do that both in Fusion 360, because there are a lot of broke-ass skateboarders on this planet that cannot afford nearly $5,000 piece of software like SolidWorks. And they can get something that will get them going literally for free, or get a student version of it. So there's a lot bigger base of the people who want and can get free software. And it's a very, very capable program. I've been using SolidWorks, though, for so long, and I love it so much because of the configurations, the ability to take a single part and have that one part shrink or grow and contain different configurations. I don't have to save and store a whole bunch of versions of that same part using different file names and then bring them in and swap them out. It's just one thing that you can magically change on the fly. Because let's face it, if you could have bushings in a model and change it from a barrel to a conical to a fat cat or eliminator style bushing, if you can have a base plate and change the angle, if you can change the truck from raked to neutral to flipped, you can change the hanger width on the fly. You can have risers and go, okay, now this 1/8 of an inch riser is 1/4 of an inch, and my mounting hardware just also grew. And do that now, literally at the flick of a switch. You can show where the wheels would rub if I used these trucks and these base plate angles and do things. So SolidWorks is an amazing piece of software. I have kind of a relationship with them, and I want to do right by them by making good videos and showing a lot of what can be done in there. But basically, there's not enough time left for me to try to hoard all the ideas or to make all the money. I'm not going to get rich doing this. What I basically want to do is try to be able to maintain the tools, the means of production to continue to make skateboards in the good old United States of America, and put that out so that other people can do the same. So if you want to get on board and help support that project, I'm not too proud to beg, but it's going to be based directly to how much I can give. So if you like these videos, oh my God, am I actually going to say like and subscribe? No. You know what to do, and I'm going to do my best to make good on my promise of getting these done this week, which I suppose is sometimes Sunday before midnight, and actually get them on a board. Matter of fact, I have kind of a lame board, but I think it can work. Oh God, even my sticker is see-through. This has got a raked fire truck on it right now. Looks like a, 45 or a 50 degree front. Similar kind of two-piece hanger construction. And then, of course, green wheels on the back and one green bushing or something. but it's like a 20-degree fire truck on the back. I'm actually going to have to take this board apart to put these new trucks on it. This was a flat board, I think, and then there's some foam under the grip tape. I think I got this from Madrid, and where am I looking here? And the Carrascos and everything. My camera also wants to track my face and keep that in focus, so maybe this would get in better focus if I hide behind the board or something. So I'm learning how to make these videos. One of these days I'm going to learn how to shut up. Obviously that didn't happen today. Who knows how long this video it is. Maybe I'll cut it out. But I'm the one-hit wonder because I literally don't really know how to edit videos yet. So I hit start, I change some scenes, I start talking, and hopefully by the time it's all over, you get what you came here for. Okay, Chris Chaput, out.